Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Transistance, Trans News Live on the Transverse. See how many times I can say trans there in a row. I hope you all are having a great night. We're very excited to jump in. Tonight, Jeannie will not be with us. She's on vacation, so it's just Marla and I holding the reins tonight. Hi, Marla. How are you today?
Doing okay. How are you?
Good, good. I'm always excited to do this show. This one's super fun, even though we do get pretty angry with some of the stuff that goes on out there, don't we?
I can get angry for myself and Jeannie. I'm good at that.
Okay, there you go. So filling in for Jeannie's anger will be Marla. I love that you have a very vivid and wild top on tonight. You have
I know
kind of
this is.
a bold outfit. So if you
Uh,
want to know more about what that is, Marla has a video that's coming out. When will you be able to get that posted?
Probably tomorrow or the next day. Oh, and look at these boots. Look at these boots. They make my entire desk shake wildly.
So yeah, stay tuned for Marla's TikTok account. The floor is Marlava tomorrow for that. I want to just take a second to say hi to chat. How is everybody doing out there? It's great to see y'all. Thank you for coming. Let's go ahead and get into our first set of stories here. Let me find my browser. Oh, yep, we're not ready for sports yet. Oh, you know what it is?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll stay front and center the whole time. It's fine. It's a treat for everybody.
To one of our favorite people here, our favorite situations. Netflix responds after exclusion from HRC's Corporate Equality Index. Do you know much about this one, Marla?
Yeah, so basically, the Human Rights Campaign does this corporate equality index every year where they decide um, for certain businesses and top companies which ones are the best ones um, to work at or to be a part of, which are the most LGBTQ friendly and the most progressive. And basically, they said Netflix, no thanks, you are no longer welcome. We're not even going to allow you on the index. Their original plan had been to dock only 25 points from Netflix, but then eventually decided to remove them altogether because of Dave Chappelle's The Closer and just how very poorly Netflix reacted to that entire situation. For those of you who do not know, Netflix allowed Dave Chappelle to put up an extremely um, controversial stand-up routine. There's about what would you say 25, 30 minutes of him mocking transgender people, not in good faith, not in good fun. And after the criticism, some Netflix employees spoke up, spoke out, said that this would contribute to the high rates of violence. Some of them were fired, some of them were dismissed or put on leave. And the CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, in reply said, while some employees disagree, we have a strong belief that content on screen doesn't directly translate to real world harm, which might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Very
Actions
head in the
come
sand.
straight from, I know, actions come straight from words. It takes a lot of privilege to believe that that's true.
Yeah.
Um, all in all, with the Human Rights Campaign, Netflix, of course, disagrees with the decision and says that they've made great strides in their transgender healthcare plan, as well as increased transgender and LGBTQ representation on screen. Um, I've said it once and I've said it before. You can't do pro LGBTQ things while doing anti LGBTQ things. You can't just be like, they even out. That's not the way progress works.
Mhm. Well, it's their prerogative. They can show both sides and say it's balanced and fair, whatever. But you can't then expect that you're going to get accolades from the LGBT community, from those that
Yeah.
support and try and keep them safe.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason you need to put hateful harmful material on your airwaves. There's no reason for it. Why are you pandering to those people? And you know what drives me nuts is I think a lot of companies have realized that they'd rather pander to progressives than, um, people who want to move backwards. And that's not just a moral decision, but they realize that, um, there's more money to be made that way. Because all in all, they wouldn't do it if there's not more money to be made that way. Someone crunched the numbers and said it is better to be progressive than to be hateful. Gillette did it in 2019 when they made that. Do you remember that ad where they were like, it was like the right kind of man? It was like, this whole ad that was against toxic masculinity and shitty men and basically right wing men. And like people were pissed off and they were like, oh, they're going to lose their business. And everyone was like, no, they're actually going to gain business. No one makes these decisions without actually thinking and crunching the numbers on how it's going to affect their bottom line.
Yeah, and it's wonderful when we live in a society where you know that there's problems. It's problematic, and we're going to get into a lot of that tonight. But you know, there's a lot to be said for that when it is beneficial for companies from the most um, uh, oh, why am I blanking on this? The consumerism, from the most consumerist based uh, perspective, that it still does benefit them to do something that is morally correct.
Yes. I mean, it does give me some hope in mankind that it's like, oh, turns out if you play to uh, progressiveness and inclusion and love and all that, there's more money to be made. So there's something really nice about that to me, reassuring about that to me.
But then you're kind of confused of like, so why are so many companies coming out like anti trans and LGBT then? Like, why are they fighting so hard to be dinosaurs?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't think they're crunching the numbers in those cases. I really don't. They're just kind of sticking to what they know.
All right, next up, you brought us an article. Marla sourced most of these, except for most of the sports articles we'll get into in my
Oh,
section.
actually, there's one I want to save for the end,
Okay,
and
there
I
was
think
the
it might be
second
the
one.
one you're going to.
Hmm.
Let's save the emoji one to the end because it's super interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
a fun one to end on. Okay, that was our next, so
Yes.
that's a good one. It's a good note. We'll move over in entertainment to Batgirl.
Okay, Batgirl. As I type that into my search to find where it is.
Batgirl. So
Yeah.
this is the Variety article. Batgirl officially casts Ivory Aquino as first trans character in DC Comics feature film.
Yeah. So there is a straight to streaming Batgirl movie that is coming to HBO Max. It's they've included Ivory Aquino, who has played Cecilia Chung in When We Rise. She was also in the Netflix adaptation of Tale of Two Cities, or Tales of the City, rather. Olive, of course, Olive wants the attention. Um, and she is to play this character that is Batgirl's roommate. It's this very not well known character from the DC universe. Actually, the first major trans character in mainstream comic books. Um, and the character is transgender. Um, my understanding is in the original comics, it was very much one of a classic, like, oh my God, I have to tell you something, I'm trans. It was like this whole big deal when it never had to be. I think they're doing away with that and they're just making her this normal, likable character. Character is uh, an activist, and if it's anything like the comic books, she ends up in a relationship with a woman just to add to an extra level of queerness. So, very excited to see that piece of media coming soon.
And show the other article that you had of that has a little bit more imagery around
Hmm.
the character. the green with the baseball hat. Awesome. No, that is great. It's always great to see the, obviously trans representation, but then the chance for a trans actor to actually star in it, or to do the role and to get the recognition for that is wonderful to see. I love that.
Yeah, it's a nice. If nobody knows, Supergirl has. I think we mentioned this a few months ago. Supergirl actually has a major trans character. If anybody is actually interested in watching that.
I just love watching you kind of slowly fall off screen as the dog.
Luna's on the phone and not watching the show, so she doesn't realize what's happening. Hi. Okay, come be on the show. You can't squeak the toy, but you can be on the show if you really want. Okay, where are we going next?
Next is over to we're talking about Jeopardy again. So
Yep.
the last time we talked about Amy Schneider, she had been assaulted and mugged, and then
Correct.
now she's back on and she's talking about that her greatest Jeopardy achievement was the awareness for the trans community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Amy Schneider, if you don't know, 40-year-old Oakland software engineer, um, has finally lost in her streak on Jeopardy. She's now leaving Jeopardy with $1,382,000 approximately. Second longest winning streak in Jeopardy history, only behind Ken Jennings. Um, if anyone's interested, the question she lost on was the only nation in the world whose name in English ends in an H. It's also one of the top 10 or the 10 most populous, and the answer was Bangladesh. If anyone was interested in what finally got her out, her 40-day streak was broken by Roan Talsma, and actually this makes me really happy because he is openly gay, a Chicago librarian, and a civil rights advocate. So, at least, our transgender superstar is being replaced by a queer civil rights advocate. So that's really wonderful. Amy will be returning to Jeopardy in the fall for the show's Tournament of Champions. So I'll be sure to watch her there. She says, it's a really good feeling. I've benefited from the work and sacrifice of so many trans people over the years. I'd always had a slight twinge of guilt, I guess, that I wasn't really doing anything for future generations. And now I can really say, without really trying to, I've made a little bit of difference, and that really makes me happy, which is wonderful. And she has been an absolute magnificent person to watch, with so much grace and so much wit and so much charm, batting away all the transphobes in this whole saga.
Yeah, that's just so wonderful, and I love the fact that now that she's done, she's passed the torch over to someone else who can carry it, that's in the LGBT sphere, and that's so great.
Yeah.
Rosa says we don't get the show over here. I'm hoping. Well, I don't know if you get blocked on Netflix too, but they do have some Jeopardy on Netflix. So
I have no idea like when they add those episodes. Like I
mm,
remember it first appearing at the beginning of the pandemic and being like, this is gonna be great. And then like I don't know if you've ever tried to binge watch a game show, you really very quickly forget where you are and what episodes you've seen.
yeah. No, I definitely used to do that. I loved DVRing it because I'm not much of a what is it called when you follow the schedule like an appointment watcher. Nah. I
Like
just
what? Yeah, what? Yes, I get what
I
you mean.
yeah, I feel like sitting down and watching the show, so I sit down and watch the show. That's why DVR makes my life amazing. And so yeah, I just go
Mhm.
through 3 or 4 episodes, no problem. Kill the commercials. It's great. But yeah, I pretty much have to delete them right away, otherwise I wouldn't be able to tell which ones I'd seen.
Yeah, that's the issue. It's so much, with the TV show, you like a serial TV show, you're like, okay, here's where we are in the story. With this, it's like, I think I've seen that person on the game, but before this question seems familiar, like, and then you're like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen this one, and then you're like, I've wasted 10 minutes before I realized.
Well, that's why I never understood why I had a girlfriend who liked the soap opera. She liked Days of Our Lives, and
Uh huh.
I would try avoiding it, as much as I could. But then I'd be over hanging out with her, spending time, and she'd be watching it, so I'd have to be sucked into watching it. And it would be like 2 weeks, and they were still on all of the like little subplots were still in the same place. Like nothing had really
Uh,
progressed. It was just like, wow, okay,
uh,
so I didn't miss anything. Great. Let's move over to, I'm not familiar with this website, but we're talking about um, a top NOAM advisor makes terrorism comparison during transgender sports bill hearing. What's going on here? I didn't get a chance to dive into this one.
yeah, so it's just another state, South Dakota in this case, trying to pass anti-transgender girls in sports bills.
Hmm.
Um, the bill, um, I it's just been it's fine, and it's in its final steps of reaching the governor's desk. But in a hearing about it, Mark Miller, a member of the governor's chief of staff, said, by putting it into law, we are ensuring that what we're seeing all over the country does not happen in South Dakota. It's sort of like terrorism. You want to keep it over there, not let it get to here. If that's not a dog whistle, I really and truly don't know what is. That you're treating trans girls in sports like at the level of danger as terrorism.
Yeah,
Like that is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Some Republicans are saying that the governor's bill is not strong enough in its enforcement mechanism. Um, they want to bring a amendment in the bill that would allow people to sue for monetary damages.
hmm,
That's come the heck. This is grade school and high school sports.
yeah. That's the only way that they're able to enforce these laws and make them have any tooth. That they can just send it to basically basic vigilantism, where it's just deputizes everybody into bounty hunters. Just everybody can
Mm-hmm.
go and sue anybody, and so that's the way you get people to stop it. They're not trying to protect anything. They're just trying to make sure that people can't do or be who they want to be.
Yep.
And yeah, the level of typical what we're seeing on the right a lot is just the, like you said, the dog whistling, the comparison, the demonizing, and the comparison to horrible, obviously horrible things, these crazy straw man arguments that um it makes it hard to argue against for the average person, because it's like, well, obviously terrorism's terrible and blah blah blah, but they're making these horribly unfair generalization, or um
Comparisons.
comparisons, yeah, tying these
Yeah.
two things together. And the thing that sucks, and the things that I just really thought of right now as we were reading this article, the thing that they fear when they're talking about this is trans men, are is men in women's sports. But if
Mm-hmm.
you think about it, how many of the sports they're talking about are adults, truly adults, versus how many of these are just children that
Yes.
are just trying to belong and achieve something, fight hard,
Yep.
just all the great things that sports are about. But yeah, they're demonizing people and making it like it's this big adult conspiracy thing or whatever. It's no, if you really step back and think of it and think from your heart and with empathy, like these are children. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand where they're coming from in any of this.
Hate and wanting to erase. I mean, it's all control. It always is. It's just to the idea that transgender people can exist and can escape the gravity of the regimented system that they have set up. That colonialism and the patriarchy and Eastern or rather Western European Anglican culture has set up, if there are people proving that you can do that, then their whole system becomes in question.
Well, they've been trying to do that for a long time, right? Find ways to eat at the entire setup we have here into our entire society and our basically our government, so that they can use the fear and the belief in what they're talking about to say, no, you should let us do it the way we want to, so that they can get, the dictatorial power to make the laws that they want. And
Yeah.
they can't do it with our, even though they have done so much to sway things in our Supreme Court, they still can't control everything the way they want to. So now they're going to these draconian laws and the stuff about, bounty hunter initiatives that, just to get around the law. And it's funny for the party that says that they're the law and order party, and they fight for the Constitution and all that. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
They fight for
Yeah.
their right to govern the way they want to have the
Yeah.
control they want to. And
Yeah.
it's infuriating. And we're
Yes.
moving on. From CBC, a UNB law clinic helps people in trans and gender diverse communities change their names. What's going on here? This sounds positive.
Yeah, so the University of New Brunswick, Canada, they've set up a gender diverse legal clinic. They're offering pro bono name change assistance to local transgender persons. They're using law students who they've taught to be well versed in the process to help complete the task. It had been open for a number of years, but this year they've expanded its services to the whole Atlantic Canada region, as well as online services. And this whole thing started with this former student named Amber Chisholm. And Amber had run a workshop on gender transition for the local transgender support group, and um, she'd bring paperwork and go over it and offer basic legal information. And she continued offering that service to whoever contacted her. And after she graduated, basically these law students reached out to her and they said, "Would you like to make this a thing again and to be like a standardized thing here at the college, this clinic?" And she said yes, and now she is the supervising lawyer for the clinic.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was looking to try and find her name. Who is it again?
Uh, Amber Chisholm, Chisholm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we have a tertiary connection to her. I need to circle back around on that and get her on the show,
Mm-hmm.
the transgender show. That's wonderful. That's so great to hear that people are able to do this for cheaper, for free, that that provide these services for trans folks. I just had a guest on the transgender show that worked to put together an entire list of the United States, so that and find one therapist in each, at least one therapist in each state, that would guarantee that you could get a letter for hormones and that kind of stuff to start your processes after just one session visiting the therapist. So they
Oh,
promised to
that's
do that. And
wonderful.
there are lists out there, but Van Ethan Levy, who was it that put this list together, found that they didn't always honor that. So it's just great to see the people that are finding these ways to do free or simple little services like this.
Yeah. I mean, even like right now, I'm currently working on my name change, and I'd originally tried doing, and not that anything would have gone wrong, but I had initially tried doing it just by grabbing the paperwork and filling it out. And then I was like, oh, they actually have this automated system where I answer a bunch of questions and it fills everything out for me. And doing that, like, I was offered more things, like, um, I was offered, if I wanted to get the fee waived for it, and like it just printed me out this whole thing that was like, okay, here's your form, you bring this to be notarized, and when you're done with that, you do this, and then like the whole thing was just spelled out for me. I mean, that's of course New York State, which is much different than a lot of um, states in the United States, but Yeah, I mean, even for a state where you would think it's so easy, like New York, there are even here tiny little things that you might miss.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through and I went through a legal service to try and get the help. I thought it was going to be one of those things where like they would sort of help automate it or whatever, and all they did automated was grabbing the forms for you and sending them to you. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
great.
I guess I could have done that. Um, but then I looked at it and it was like, $300 or $400 for the newspaper for a month to post, the name change in there, and then the same about the same for the cost for the actual application.
Hmm.
And I think there was something else, and it ended well with the $100 I'd already spent on the legal thing. I was just like, this is gonna round out to $1,000. I'm like, I'm gonna take a pause on this for a minute. And now I found that you don't have to do the newspaper thing anymore. Yay, that's awesome. And I guess you can get a waiver for the fee. So I need to get on that. That's something that needs to
Yeah,
happen this year
it's
because, I think it just makes life so much easier.
yes.
I,
I'm I
yeah.
know I'm sure you agree I'm sick to death of going to a bar. Like bars are the worst for me. Like or like having to show my now even like you have to show an ID when you show your vaccine um passport. So it's just kind of like um every place I go that is a sit down restaurant, I have to bust out my ID and be like, great, now this person knows. Like, and that is not what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I went and got a smog check today, and I'm filling out the form, and I'm like, well, this is tied to my car, the registration, the whole thing. So I think I got to put the legal name on it, and and so I did, and then I went back after I was done filling out the form, and I put in parentheses after my last name, Emily, because I'm like, no, I want them to know my name.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I hadn't even realized that you can do, and I'm so grateful I was able to, and it's just very easy, is on my credit card. You can apply for a second card, and they don't care what name you put it on it because it ties to the original account, to your original bank account. So it doesn't matter what the card says. And
Oh.
so I have an Emily card, and then thankfully, this is one of the ways it's actually nice being older is people don't really question if I'm old enough to drink. So I don't get
Oh.
carded that often. And usually like you're handing, someone your credit card to pay a bill or whatever,
Mhm.
and it says Emily on it, and I get to sign Emily, and it's just like
Is that Visa? Visa? Is that MasterCard?
mine's a Visa, yeah. A Chase
Okay.
Visa.
Okay. It's good to know that Visa does it, that you can do it for a secondary card to
Hmm.
get it done. That's actually really smart because my rather MasterCard now offers even just on the first card, you can put whatever name you want, but Visa, as far as I know, does not. But you're probably right; they don't actually care on the second card because it's just attached to the legal name.
Well, and then I'm just kind of bummed, like PayPal, all of these other bank accounts and stuff. Like, not only, are you stuck with your dead name, but like you cannot change it. To change it, you have to completely wipe out the account and start again. It's just like, whew, I
Ugh.
cannot wait to do that. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Feel like we've gotten off track a little bit here. Let's get back on. Oh, maybe we should have held out a little bit longer. I'm not looking
Why?
forward to this. Dr. Phil sparks transphobic
Oh.
pylon with the debate on the existence of trans non-binary people, and what it was in the bit that he did on his show was the debate over pronouns. Marla, take this one away.
So January 19th, Dr. Phil has this episode that's supposed to be a quote, safe space to talk and learn about transgender identities and pronouns. And he invites Addison Rose Vincent and their spouse Ethan, both non binary,
Addison's
to be
awesome.
on.
I love Addison. I've been following her
Oh,
for a
yeah,
long time.
you know
Yeah.
them. To be on the show. And the episode begins and it's very educational, with them explaining their identities and describing the difference between sex and gender, discussing how to ask another person which pronouns to use, and detailing how um, trans and non-binary people exist, and have been around and all that. And then Dr. Phil, because he is just a piece of shit looking for drama, I'll remind everyone that Dr. Phil has not had his psychiatrist, his license since 2006. So like the fact that the man still calls himself doctor is bonkers.
Hashtag not
But
a real doctor.
hashtag not a real doctor. Um, and then he surprises them by bringing on Matt Walsh, who is, one of the most horrendous conservative talking heads out there. Matt Walsh, I'll remind everyone, does not hold a college degree in anything, should not be speaking on complicated issues like this. He does not have the experience or the education to do so. He's also called transgender healthcare an experiment and abuse and rape. So Matt Walsh has no business on this supposedly progressive and learning episode. And his big thing is that he said that all of conservative internet is now bloviating about is he asked, "What is a woman?" Which neither of them could answer because one, neither of them are women. And two, I said this in a TikTok last week. It's unfair to ask someone that on a high stakes drama TV show like
Mhm.
that because it's extremely nuanced and takes a lot of explanation. And if you haven't like really like really created a model in your head to quickly and succinctly describe these things, it's not fair to have to go against someone who's going to grab Merriam-Webster and be like, this is what it says, because of course a dictionary is not
Well, and
does
I
not go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I've seen things about Matt Walsh, and like, I mean, he is an expert debater. Like, that's what he does. Like, he can take anything that you say and twist it against you. Like he does not represent the opposition to trans beliefs, ideals, perspectives. He represents an attack.
Yeah.
His whole thing is his ability to attack the other person, shred their argument, shred them, and leave them with nothing. There's nothing else in his repertoire other than that. That's what
But
he's set to do.
the issue is though it's not nothing he ever says is good faith or actually based on fact or anything, he sets himself up in a way where he doesn't have to do any work and he leaves everyone else to do all the work so that he can sit back and take advantage of that. And the right wing echo chambers exploded with all this nonsense. He also himself released a video that edited the exchange to make it look way worse than it was. Um, Steve Frosh, an LGBTQ activist, um, wrote on Twitter, the fact that Dr. Phil used his platform to exploit two non binary guests he invited on the show to discuss pronouns by inviting a transphobic, cretinous troll on stage to mock the suffering and oppression of trans people immediately after is disgusting, and so is he. I
Yeah.
mean, just. The world will never recover from Oprah exposing us to Dr. Phil.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like they ever bring out an expert, a doctor,
Yeah.
with scientific evidence and knowledge to provide a counter argument, because there is no counter argument. So science, the medical field, they know that being trans is real. It's a real thing. And so they don't have any real argument. So the only thing that they can do is they can bring out the guy that's just going to shred your own argument. Just
Mm-hmm.
because that's what he's good at. He's just good at taking your own words and turning them against you. So
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense. And that's completely unfair and horrible.
Yeah.
And that's even worse than I thought that the actual article was. I did not realize that he had been involved.
Yeah, I mean, he was there. If these two non-binary individuals didn't know he was coming, and he knew the situation he was walking into, ready with his pre-thought out nonsense, that's a very unfair playing field.
That's
And
just
there's
dirty.
only one goal in doing that,
Hmm.
and it's to discredit trans people. So, Dr. Phil, go after yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, just Phil. Mr. Phil, go
Mister.
after yourself.
I love that. Yes, let's take to calling him Mr. Phil in all the socials and get rid of
Hmm.
that Dr. Horse crap. Doesn't deserve it. Let's see. Another wonderful individual. Let's go and talk about Joe Rogan. Jordan Peterson tells Joe Rogan being trans is a contagion similar to satanic ritual abuse. So again, some wonderful examples of the human condition here. Marla, why don't you take this one away?
Jordan Peterson, possibly one of the only people more disgusting than Matt Walsh, went on Joe Rogan's podcast, said that transgender people are a sociological contagion similar to satanic ritual abuse. Um, uh, he said that this is a sign of society falling apart, which is nonsense because we have always been here. Um, he also said, I think I think probably it's not so much an obsession with gender, it's a disintegration of categories as a precursor. Like, so it's a marker for if categories just dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving because the culture is a structure of category. That sounded like a very circular bullshit answer. And it seems ridiculous for a man who's constantly bitching about identity politics to, be going on about, we have to keep categories. There must be categories. This man constantly bitches about identity politics. What is identity politics but creating categories? Um, now, a little bit about Jordan Peterson, if you don't know who he is, where do I even begin? So, some of the ideas of things he said that the reason Donald Trump and the far right European politicians came to be is because of a negative reaction to a push to feminize men. If men are pushed too hard to feminize, they will become more and more interested in harsh fascist political ideology. Let's just keep victim blaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, he also, what did he say? Uh, he believes that order is masculine and chaos is feminine. I mean, the guy's just full on misogynist. Like,
Wow. Wow.
yes, I mean, the man needs to lose his license. So, more than 270 doctors, physicians, and science educators have signed an open letter to Spotify calling for the platform to take action against these false claims and against Rogan's podcast. If anyone missed it last week, Neil Young, um, because of Joe Rogan's lies about the COVID vaccine, was like, Spotify, you can either have my music or you can have Joe Rogan, and Spotify chose Joe Rogan. So, if you're thinking about changing music platforms, subscriptions, probably not Spotify, is what I'll
Wow.
say.
Wow. I listen to Spotify a lot. I do not pay for it. But wow, that yeah, I'm gonna find something new now.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Yeah, there you go again about capitalism and the choices that they make. Rogan gets more eyeballs and ears because he just says the dumbest things and
Yeah.
people eat it up and he
Yeah.
brings dumb people on to say dumber things.
I
Nice.
would love to see what percentage of his audience is man versus woman.
Well, you made that comment that was from the article about the feminization or whatever, and
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, the feminism movement was a big thing for a while, and it was kind of all over, and I guess there is a masculine misogynist backlash to it because they backlash against anything that they fear might take away from their absolute power.
Yeah.
But like I don't know if you remember. Um, Another wonderful human being from the same ilk, Adam Carolla, writing his book
Oh,
that in
yeah.
50 years we'll all be chicks, which
Yep.
is great language there to begin with. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't get it's so funny how small, shriveled in a corner, fearful they are. of everything. They're just afraid of everything. And you can tell by the way they're saying that, like, oh, it's like it's going to be like terrorism, or society will crumble entirely because we're going to get rid of all categories, and nothing will matter anymore, and black is white, cats and dogs getting along together. It's just
Yeah.
just tone down the drama a little bit and actually open your eyes and see what happens. Like, see
Yes.
what's actually going on. But they don't want to. They want to sit in their ivory towers and just kind of like point fingers and say, well, this has got to be the most horrible thing ever because it's not something that I understand or like or want to do.
They want neither in they don't want a tolerant or equitable society in any way, shape, or form.
No. And they want to keep us against each other and afraid. Those are the two
Yep.
things that keep them the most in power. And
Yep.
they've done a really good job of even here on this show turning us against the right, the Republican side.
Yep.
um,
Just the fact that TERFs exists, like, you know, they're
and
just taking
an
swings at trans
LGBT
people.
alliance.
Yeah, just taking swings at trans people instead of the actual people responsible for misogyny and the patriarchy. I
Mhm.
mean, as if, there hasn't been the patriarchy and misogyny and all this shit for thousands of years, while transgender people were, quiet and in the darkness. And then all of a sudden we've shown up and they're like, oh, it was them all along. Like, it's such not.
Yeah.
Who tricked you? How did these people trick you into this?
Well, what's funny is like one of the most poignant, counter reactions that's happened in recent memory is also the one that was the most toothless, and that was the March on Wall Street and the whole thing
Mhm.
about the 1%. And I mean, of all of the things that have happened recently with protests and things like that in recent memory, again, that was the one that just had the least to it. There was no action. There was no, this is what we need to do. They were just kind of, just occupying and sitting there and saying this sucks, but not offering solutions or fixing it. I feel like that was one of the biggest wastes. And I think that's why Bernie Sanders seemed to do so well for a bit. And then when it came actual time to the Democratic Party, just chickened out because again, the Democrats in power don't get to keep their power if they turn the power over to the people,
Yep.
or so they think. So they fear. All right, we're going over to Mississippi, which already sends a shiver down my spine.
Uh,
Mississippi mayor withholding funds until LGBTQ books removed, library director claims. So now we've gotten to a place where they are holding schools hostage. What's going on
yep.
here, Marla?
So, the Ridgeland, um, Mississippi Mayor Gene McGee is withholding $110,000 in funding from the Mississippi City's library. Um, the until what he calls homosexual material has been removed from the library. The Ridgeland Board of Aldermen had approved the budget, which the mayor has no right to withhold. In addition, the library director, Tanya Johnson, refuses to step down, stating the library serves and represents the whole of the community, not a religious institution. And McGee's reply to that is the library can serve whoever they want, but that he, McGee, only serves the great Lord above. Imagine hearing that out of your mayor. Um, they're currently working on a public hearing for this. I will guarantee to you that um, a large amount of these books are children's books that just depict same sex parents. We see it every single time. Between this and the book burner in Virginia that we talked about last week, and the Tennessee School Board banning not only now this week To Kill a Mockingbird, but a bunch of other stuff, including Pulitzer Prize winning Holocaust graphic novel Mouse. We can see what's happening here. They are just looking to get rid of any books, any education on anything but cis, het, white culture.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't want to, um, I mean, the excuse is they don't want their kids to have to feel bad about bad things, especially when it comes to like the Holocaust and slavery and all that. And it's just like, that's not how any of this works. I mean,
That's not
there's
how
children
education
of
works.
those of those um, um, experiences, whether they be black or they be Jewish or gay or trans or whatever, who are experiencing that the hate that those events and have caused and created ripple effects, and they're just saying that they don't care about that at all. And I'll remind everyone that these are the people who are constantly crying about cancel culture. So the projection truly just never ends.
It'd be nice to put together a list of all of the, the arguments and the contradictions to those arguments,
Hmm.
from those same people. I also like the idea of putting together a list of all of the things that trans people are now being compared to. I, I,
Oh, that's a great idea. Oh my God, I love that idea.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll have to be a side project we work on, Marla, because
Yeah.
it's just going to be a hilarious list. Uh, all right. Let's move on to someone getting a little bit of revenge here, and let's hope this plays out something similar to what you're working on in your personal life, Marla. A transphobe doxed me, so I doxed them back. What's happening here?
So basically, it was a story of this transgender person who had um, been doxxed on the internet. I think they had experienced it multiple times, and then um, in one instance, I mean, this is more of like a what would you call this? Like a an opinion piece, just kind of documenting their experience. And sure enough, they had someone who was hateful to them, and that person, like many of these people, it blows my mind every time, just had their name and their face right there on their profile. And they looked them up and they very quickly found their LinkedIn. They could very easily end that person's career and social life and so on. And the article's just basically about what that balance looks like. What is doing, like, what happens if I do this? Does it actually get people to say, oh, I need to stop doing this because I might get in trouble? Does it get people to double down and become even more hateful? Um, does it make them want to seek out revenge? So there's, in the end, I think the author basically decided not to do it, but it was just a really interesting look on the fear that you might feel of it going all sorts of different ways if you do try to expose
Mm,
transphobes. I mean, I did it. I never got an email back. I don't know what came of it, but there was this individual who a friend had sent to me their YouTube account where they were writing all these ridiculously horrendous songs about Sandy Hook not being real and all this stuff. And then he had written this extremely transphobic piece that I did a TikTok on. And then people realized, oh, this person works with Postmodern Jukebox. And people started tagging Postmodern Jukebox in my video. I decided, what the hell? I emailed Postmodern Jukebox. I was like, you should know that this person is working for you, and I'm sure you have a large queer audience, and you know they don't want to know that you are paying money to somebody like this.
mm.
And I never did get a response. I don't know if he has lost um, any further working with Postmodern Jukebox, but I made the decision to out this person, and I do not regret it.
Well, yeah, if you can do something like that on an individual basis, I think it's not nothing really will come of it. Especially if you do it, if you contact the company, the employer specifically or directly.
Mhm.
If you get into something online and make a big deal of it, then yeah, you're going to look just as bad as they do, and then
Hmm.
you're also going to just give them fuel to come back, and like you said, and say, oh, look at the attacks that they're doing. They'll
Which
ignore
is
the stuff.
ridiculous.
Yeah, they'll ignore the stuff that was done to provoke you, just like everything that you've seen on TikTok, where someone threatens your life and you respond and say, hey, this is hate speech, and don't do and call them, an asshole or whatever, and then your account gets blocked for hate speech or whatever because of
Yep,
what you
that would
said
be.
in response to their attack of actual real violence. Um,
Yep.
it's just the way it is. The person who hits second is the one that gets caught and slapped the hardest.
Yeah, I mean, it feels a lot like what high schools do, where it's like, a bully punches a kid and a kid punches them back, and the school suspends both of them, or the kid who punched back, and it's such a bad way of looking at things. Um, yeah, I just want to point out that this. I mean, I did something about this a couple of weeks ago. This whole idea of cancel culture is bullshit. It's boycotting. We've always done it. It's always been a thing. It is my freedom. You are not being punished by the government. It is my freedom of speech to say this person has holds disgusting views, and I will not be buying anything from any company that employs them. And other people should know that this company employs this shitty individual, and they should be able to have that free speech and that knowledge to make the decision whether or not they want to um, uh, boycott the company or whatever it might be either.
Yeah, it's another one of their ridiculous contradictions where they're talking both sides of their mouth. They always say that, oh, it's capitalism and capitalism is great, and in capitalism the market decides.
Hmm.
The people decide. If they don't like a product, they won't buy it. And that's the beauty of capitalism. It always is self-correcting because the people have the power or whatever. And then it's just like then the people show their power and do what those people say is the right thing for the way capitalism is supposed to work, and they're like, oh my god, cancel culture, they're doing all this stuff just to shut everybody down. It's like
Yeah.
they love to have it always.
From this, it's exactly it. I mean, it's the same party that brought you. You can discriminate. A bakery can discriminate against gay people. Is the same party who is like, uh, Twitter removed me for saying, these hateful things. This is against my freedom of speech. No, it's not. They are a business doing exactly what that hateful, homophobic baking company did. The one you supported. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, they keep trying though. They keep trying. They just have this view that they're always right, that they are always right.
Their voices must be heard no matter how harmful they are.
Hmm. It doesn't matter the other perspective at all. Like they don't care about hearing about the other perspective. It's only about what it matters to me.
Mm. Yes.
Let's move into sports now. Your favorite.
Oh, good.
Luckily, these first two are articles that you found, so maybe I don't feel
Yeah.
so bad, but I think you still wanted me to read them here, so let me get into them.
Yeah.
Olympian Brooke Ford says she has no problem racing against transgender swimmer Leah Thomas. Olympic swimmer Brooke Ford is defending Leah Thomas, a trans woman who drew national attention after shattering multiple records. She says that I believe treating people with respect and dignity is more important than any trophy or record will ever be, which is why I will not have a problem racing against Leah in at the NCAA's this year. And this is such an idealistic look at it, and so beautiful to say that, I mean, she's basically defining what sport is, that treating people with respect and dignity and respect for the sport, and going out there and giving it your all against the other competitors, and not complaining about what advantage someone might have over another, or what perceived this, that, or the other. And it's beautiful. I love to see a competitor stand up and, get Leah's back. I think that's so important. I just worry that it's not going to have a whole lot of tooth to it, because um, you start talking respect and dignity, and the people we're talking about it just like it. I mean, talk about falling on deaf ears. I
Meaningless to them.
what is your perspective on this one?
I mean, I'm happy that um, Brooke said it. Um, I also agree. I don't think it's gonna do much of anything. I I keep bringing this up, and it's especially with Leah Thomas and all these other things, and it's what drives me nuts about these people, and it's all confirmation bias. One transgender athlete wins, and they go see, 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 see. Meanwhile, I could point to you about 100 examples of a transgender athlete losing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they do not care. They do not care that um, that the numbers are clearly proving us correctly.
Mm-hmm.
They find one instance and they blow it up, and the media goes right along with it, blows it up for them. I just every goddamn time I hear someone have to talk about that MMA fighter who um, caused an orbital fracture in her opponent, the transgender MMA fighter, I'm like, that injury happens in that sport every 2 to 3 months. It is an extremely common injury. They're like, people be like, oh, she busted her skull open, like
Yeah.
tore her face off, and like, no, she literally inflicted an injury that is extremely common in the sport. But you refuse to look outside of one stupid goddamn video that someone sent to you from YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Well, we even hit that really early on when we started talking about the subject, a couple months ago, and that was the reality that the woman that won, and I think it was another swimming competition that won and kind of started this whole anti-trans in sports thing a few years ago. She was actually defeated by the woman she beat the year that they used to hold up to say that trans people shouldn't be in sports. The very next year, the cis woman won, but that is never brought into the discussion.
Emily, it's almost as if, hold on, stick with me here. In sports, someone wins and someone loses, and that's what sports are. Like that, like
No, I
it's
don't
just.
know. I think you're way off. I don't I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my
I
god.
love the point that's made in the next article that's very similar. Unless you have anything more to say about that specifically on this one.
No, I kind of put these two together to
Okay.
kind
Yeah.
of.
No, and I love what's said in the next article. Michael Phelps's trans ex-girlfriend calls him a hypocrite, and of course, we need to stop and talk for a second about Michael Phelps has a trans ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, that was us right before the show going, what? Like, how did we not know about this?
Yeah, awesome. That's so cool. I mean, like, I loved watching Michael Phelps. That's the thing about sport, and that's the thing that again, going back to your previous point, that they're not looking into it all. That it's not the it's not the honor and the tradition of the game that sells tickets and gets people excited. Look at baseball. It's the people that hit dozens and dozens of home runs a week. Like
Mhm.
that's what does it. It's not the strategy of eking out that one run to win 1-0. It's the people that dominate, that come in and just
Mhm.
destroy records.
Yeah.
Like that's why Michael Jordan lit everything on fire, and Wayne Gretzky and all that. That's why these sports just light up, because they have this big superstar who's just blowing everybody else out of the water. And again, going back to Michael Phelps, who we're talking about now, just absolutely dominated, and that just gets everybody excited and interested.
Mhm.
But you can only dominate if it falls within a certain strange arbitrary set of rules. and we'll get into
Mm-hmm.
them here in this article. So the girlfriend says, she makes the point he doesn't fully understand the science, advantages or disadvantages. Chandler says, let me get her name. Do you know her name off the top of your head? Taylor Chandler.
Taylor.
Taylor Chandler. Taylor Leanne Chandler. Um, so yeah, he's a hypocrite for saying it should be a level playing field. And here's where we get into the main part of this. She says he is genetically superior with his 6'7" wingspan, double jointed ankles, and huge feet. And I've heard this several times that he's got unnaturally large feet that are just paddles. I think doesn't even have sort of like webbed hands.
I something like that. Yeah. He also I had never heard this. Apparently, he can hold his breath twice as long as anyone. I don't know what that is from, but
Yeah.
he's also scientifically proven that he creates lactic acid at half the rate of his opponents, so he
Hmm.
doesn't get sore. Like those are insane advantages.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to compete, but to say that transgender women have an advantage when you clearly have such an obscene genetic advantage and it shows in the results,
Yeah.
like Taylor said, completely hypocritical.
Hmm.
She also went on to say, um, I felt like I was good enough to love, lay with, and be with, but not be respected or allowed in the women's sports of swimming. Like I was not a woman, but rather an alien or God knows what. It can't be a women's sport if it doesn't include all women. Period.
She makes a lot of wonderful points, and it's great to see somebody that's tied to this in this way and pointing out all these huge flaws in the argument. I really hope that this kind of that this hangs around and has some kind of sway to it, because she makes again such beautiful and elegant points here about, yes, the complete unfair advantage that he has, and yet he is held up as an example of like what all the people that can't be like him should aspire
Mm-hmm.
to now.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Danny, what was that you said about party lingerie? Something random came out in chat. Uh, all right, let's keep with NCAA and talk for a second about this article here. So after the backlash, and just going nuts in the news, the NCAA has come back and released a more detailed and nuanced information about its updated transgender eligibility requirements on Friday, including a process which requires schools to submit proof of athletes' hormone suppression and accompanying laboratory results showing athletes' testosterone level. So, of course, I just found this very interesting that they have come back and they've clarified things. They're being more pointed about it and less blanket. They're talking about, and this was something that we didn't mention that Lauren had said in the previous article about her belief that it should be case by case based, sport to sport, and a little bit more thought put into everything instead of just an
Mm-hmm.
outright ridiculous ban. And so
Yeah.
that's why this is kind of good news that they've come back and they've updated the participation policy. Again, voting here for the sport by sport approach, in line with the U.S. and International Olympic Committee policy changes. The NCAA stated it will now follow the policy of the national governing body, and to support the IOC framework. Previously, NCAA only required trans women to complete 1 year of testosterone suppression prior to
Mm-hmm.
competing on a women's team. Now the NCAA has released more specific steps schools must take to compete in the 2022 Winter and Spring Championships coming up in the next few months. So, yeah, I think it needs to be done. If you're going to talk about the hormones and the levels and things like that, then you have to look more deeply than just trans women. I think you have to go, if we're going to talk about hormones here, we have to look across everybody competing. And maybe like Marla said, we have to look into how much lactic acid your body produces and how it affects your muscles. But so this is kind of a good and bad. I hate that they're missing that. Like, if you're gonna do something like this, like, why don't you look at all people entering the championships
Yeah.
to make it truly fair and level? But I do appreciate the fact that they're taking a more nuanced approach. They're looking at more detail, and they're not just saying. Personally, I obviously am for trans women in sports, and I worry about those instances because, again, they're gonna pull them, they're gonna use them as their main argument that, like, this woman is dominating here, so trans women shouldn't be able to because they have
Hmm.
this unfair advantage. So, based on that Navy report that they did, they showed that people after a year of testosterone suppression still do have an advantage, but after 2 years there's no advantage. So I think
Hmm.
there's got to be a little bit more look into where the balance is, where it comes out, and what to really look at instead of just these kind of more blanket things. But then, as I said, if you're going to do that, you should apply it to everyone entering.
Yes, and it for me it's sort of a double-edged sword. I like that they want to go case by case. I and check testosterone levels. Um, just because I think to some extent that will get people to shut the fuck up. Um, but one, I know this is not the NCAA, but I don't think that should be applied to grade schools and high schools because that is not what those sports are about. If they want to
Yeah.
start taking that route, they can go screw themselves.
Yes.
Um, but the thing what you said is a really good point, um, an interesting point, because yes, they should be looking at other things. And part of me says, oh, well, you should be checking everyone's testosterone levels if you want to do that. Unfortunately, though, I'm now thinking back to the Olympics, which um, um, made a number of black cis women athletes not compete or have to take testosterone suppressors because they had too high of a level of natural testosterone,
Yeah.
and the whole thing felt extremely racial and racist, and I
Yeah.
um, hated that so very much. But yeah, it's hard to say because it can be used correctly, and in the case of those women, it was used incorrectly. So
Hmm.
it's hard to say what the right way to go about it is. And I think maybe the right way about it to go about it is to look at all the aspects, but I don't know how reasonable that is for every single athlete.
Hmm. Well, what? I think the counterpoint that to what we're saying here is, okay, they said that these women have an unnaturally high level of testosterone. Um, and I think that's exactly the wrong way to do it. It should be the complete opposite of that, saying that natural cis women can have up to this amount of testosterone. You have to use that to slide your scale, not to cut them
Hmm.
out, but to then slide
Yeah,
your scale, and then judge. If you're going to judge trans women against cis women, then that's the way it's got to be. You can't
yeah,
use it to negate naturally born cis women
yeah,
from women's sports. I think that is just a ridiculous argument.
yes,
You need to
yeah,
just change your perspective on what women mean. Like, maybe it's just what's going on with people.
yeah,
We used to be on average, mid 5 feet. People were, I mean, go to Europe and look at a place that's, a couple hundred years old, and just notice how low the ceilings are, where the light switches are, and all that stuff. Like, we used to, as just human, as a human race, used to be shorter.
yeah,
Um, we have different, better foods and things like that. So people are taller now. The makeup of a human is different than it used to be. And so it has to be a sliding scale. That's why, again, it does have to be nuanced and looked at more deeply. But you have to keep in perspective that, okay, you have to define women differently because some women do have higher testosterone just
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
And it's unfair to take away that advantage that they have and allow Michael Phelps to have the advantages that he has.
Yes. 100%.
And when you look at that and talk about that way, now, yes, you are taking someone who has additional stuff added to them to be there. They're taking hormones and things like that. And I do think there is some fairness in looking at what those
Mhm.
levels shake out to be and that. So I don't hate it. I think it needs to be done. It needs to be done well. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of optimistic about the way they're talking about it. I did want to talk about briefly. They mentioned in that article the specific
Hmm.
form, and I thought there were some fun things in here. Let's see if we can kind of find the things in the actual application form for an athlete. So up here at the top, this form is only valid for purposes of determining eligibility for participation in 2022 sports. Um, and must be, whatever. This form is a distinct form and not a substitute for the medical exception documentation. So this is just I guess, just part of the application. It talks about some of the things some of the requirements, but there is a separate form that needs to be put in that talks about all the, your medical history, your levels, and all of the things that you're on. And here's where I think it's fair because it has to be approved by the NCAA before any student athlete using any anabolic agent, hormone or metabolic modulator, peptide hormone, growth factor, or related substances, and mimetics is allowed to participate in competition. And that just, like, again, brings up that point I said of, like, there is medical alteration happening. There are drugs that are involved, and sport loves to ban drugs that give people an advantage. And so, those things, I think it's fair to look at those things. But that was just very interesting to see that article actually linked to the specific form.
Yeah.
Um, let's see here real quick. So one of the things you need to show is a copy of lab results confirming that as the no more than 4 weeks before what your serum testosterone level is. And let's see, medical professional hormone suppression confirmation form. So just kind of fascinating stuff. I guess it's like I said, it's got to be part of what we're dealing with, but it's interesting, and
Yeah.
it's just unique. Okay, let's move over to Indiana. The bill to ban transgender students from school sports passes the Indiana House. I don't know if you'd heard about this, Marla, but
I literally can't keep track of it anymore. I don't know which state is on what, where it is in the process. There's
right?
just too many.
It's too many, and it just feels like it's all of them. It just feels like
Mhm.
all. Um, and we've talked a couple times about the ones like in Idaho and other places that are caught up in courts because there are people going, "Hey, this is BS," and so they're pushing back, and things have been held. But now this one has passed the House. The bill will prohibit students who were born male but identify as female from participating in a sport or an athletic team. Um, and again, you know, so much of this we're talking about kids, and so much of it we're not talking about adult sports. College, when there's money involved and there's a lot on the line for for your future. Elementary. Uh, I mean, this is talking specifically about K through 12 sports,
Mhm.
and it's just insane. It's just insane that they would include elementary school kids in this.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, do you know that parent who's way too obsessed with their kids, like grade school or high school sports, or like they graduate and they still come back to watch the high school football games regularly. I'm like, are these the people like that just have no, like, they're like, high school football was the peak of my life and I want to protect it. Like, is that what's happening here? Like, I don't understand it.
But who are these people that are coming back and saying high school women's soccer
Right?
or high school women's softball, like that doesn't happen. There is nobody. I mean, there are four people that would do that and come and support high school girls sports with any regularity or any kind of monetary backing. No, no. Um, so then this is a bill that's banning, and they're trying to pass it through. Unfortunately, and I mean, this is unexpected. This is not unexpected. This is completely what we would expect to come. But Donald Trump had the man with the spray tan promises to ban trans women completely from sports if reelected. Again, not at all surprising. You, yeah. I mean, this is a well, duh.
I
Um,
mean, how does followers believe that that's passable? There's no way the Supreme Court holds that up, especially if you specifically say trans women,
mhm.
because the Supreme Court will see the unevenness in that. It doesn't matter how conservative it is; they will toss that out.
You would hope. You would hope. I don't know. It's pretty much his Supreme Court, but um, let's see what he says here specifically. We will ban men from participating in women's sport. Again, love that because it's such a ridiculous argument that we've proven over and over again is not true. Um, he then criticized Leah Thomas, um, misgendered Thomas, referring to her by wrong pronouns, and falsely stated that Thomas broke an 11-year-old swimming record by 38 seconds. Oh, that's surprising, right, Marla? That he would use false data to make his claim. Um, in reality, Thomas won one match by 38 seconds, but she didn't set a record in that event. Didn't set a record. She just won, and apparently a very very bad thing. It's very bad. Um, Trump also claimed that a trans woman who he didn't name broke a 20-year record in weightlifting. It is unclear if this claim is true because
Trust
he just
me,
says things.
trust me. I know it. I saw it. She definitely won. Absolutely.
Yeah, people are saying that was a
People are
trans
saying
woman
it.
that won, and she blew out everybody. It was very unfair. It was very unfair. Yeah, that's what I heard.
So
That's what people
unfair,
are saying.
especially to me, Donald Trump.
Hmm.
Oh my
And
god.
then the
Let me
next day,
tell you right now.
Fox News will quote him the next day, and then he'll come back and say, "See, Fox News says that
Of course.
this trans woman did this, so clearly it happened."
Yeah, the dumbass to dumbass pipeline. Um,
Feedback loop, the dumbass to dumbass feedback loop.
Let me tell you something. Donald Trump has never watched a women's sport in his entire life. Not one single fucking time, except maybe the Women's Olympics when, they were in tiny, tiny bikinis. Like that's it for volleyball. Like that is the only time Donald Trump has watched a women's sport.
Very very true. Oh God, what a complete piece of garbage. Oh. And then we have an article to get you out of talking about sports for a minute here. Um, moving on to medical news: facial feminization surgeries for trans women now covered by UPMC. What's going on here, Marla?
So, this is Pittsburgh Health Insurance. They will cover medically necessary facial feminization surgery for trans women. Most health insurers and even Medicare, um, both throughout the country, don't consider um, female or facial feminization surgery to be medically needed. They consider it to be cosmetic, which is infuriating. Um, Usually, it can cost between 30 and $50,000. I mean, I don't know someone who just got it done. Um,
Wow.
and so great news, really wonderful. There are um, starting to catch up with some of the more progressive states on this subject throughout the country, which is mostly California and New York. Um, so the article says in order for UPMC to consider uh, facial feminization surgery medically necessary, they require a persistent, well documented diagnosis of gender dysphoria, including the desire to live and be accepted as a person whose gender is different than the sex assigned at birth, that causes clinical distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Patients must be at least 18 years old, be able to give their informed consent, in addition to receiving one referral from a qualified mental health professional and 12 months of continuous hormone therapy, which I'm pretty sure is fairly standard. Even in New York and California, you have to be on hormones for a certain amount of time before health insurance will cover things outside of the hormones.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't think that little rider and like in the exclusions and all that and what you need is that absurd. Hopefully, like most insurance companies, they won't like fight you tooth and nail on everything about it, but
That's the hope, but then again, I've heard lots of people talking about it. It's very front of mind that any cis person on the planet could go get a nose job or any kind of plastic surgery they want to get without having to prove persistent um, persistent anything. You
yeah,
know you can just go and do it, and it's just so ridiculous that we have to jump through these hoops when the cis community has the right and freedom to go do anything they want to their bodies, and then they get on TV shows to show how ridiculous their plastic surgery is.
yeah, ridiculous is the word. I'm thinking of like people who've made them like themselves like look like a Barbie, which is like, I mean, you do you, but I don't know what happened here.
Yeah, but I mean, surgery after surgery after surgery, and yes, I'm sure at some point you do have to prove to your doctor something that you want these, because if you're doing hundreds and hundreds of plastic surgeries, I'm sure at some point somebody kind of, God, I'm not sure. I hope somebody like starts putting up some red flags and saying, hey, 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 hold on a second. Um, but it's just it's such a ridiculous double standard, the hoops that we have to jump through in these cases to do this, when you consider how easy it would be to do these things if you were not. Granted, people are claiming this for insurance to pay for. Maybe the other plastic surgeries would be more out of pocket. I'm not really very familiar with plastic surgery. It's never been on my radar. I look at it, I think
Mhm.
it's ridiculous until I'm trans and I'm like, hmm, yeah, I don't like this nose at all. Um,
I have the hardest time when I'm watching like medical videos about like feminization surgeries because like when I see what they're actually doing, I'm like my heart starts racing because medical stuff makes me so squeamish, and
oh
I'm
yeah.
like, thank God when I busted my nose, no one showed me a depiction of what they were doing.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and that's kind of always been the argument of like it's been the argument I've tried to make to detractors, people in my family that don't understand that I'm trans or why I'm trans, and they make the argument of like I don't understand why. I don't know why you would do that stuff to yourself or whatever, or put yourself in that place. And it's like, yes, exactly. That's the argument. Like the fact that you don't understand it like proves the point. Like it's something that I have to do. Um,
Yeah,
you know, and the fact that I can't even describe why, I think is further evidence. It's
yeah,
just this outside wrapping doesn't fit what I
yes,
am. And
yes. And I think it's something that people often don't bring up when they're trying to explain um, gender, and that's one of the elements is it's how you want to be perceived and interacted with in the real world, how and how you've been conditioned for someone who has your internal self to be treated and interacted with in the real world. And if your outside does not match that, that will not happen, and that is distressful.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean, you heard someone this week, telling me that, treating my electrolysis as if it's a goddamn luxury. Guess what? It's not. Trust me. I do not want to be sitting there for an hour having an electrified needle stuck in my face 100 goddamn times.
mhm.
No one does that for fucking luxury.
No, no, no. And yeah. N- y- See, talking to Van Ethan Levy and some other people in the therapy realm, um, and I'm losing my point. Damn it. The whole point of what a therapist needs to assess when looking at a patient is sanity. Like there are certain particular things that you have to look for to know whether a person is of sound mind and body. That is a very common set of criteria, and you can tell that. Beyond that, it's not reasonable and it's improper for them to look at trans people and push back or try and diagnose further and figure out, are you trans enough? Do you really, once you determine that someone is not insane, then they should be able to do whatever surgery they want to do, because surgery is rough and it's scary. And if you're willing to put yourself through it, obviously there's a reason. There's obviously a need there for you. So I don't understand where there's the additional justification has to come into play, because it's obviously there. It's built
Yeah.
into the scenario where you're paying money, you're going through all these hoops, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're gonna go through all this pain and recovery. There's a reason for that, and so that's the justification for the means there
Yeah.
in and of itself.
I agree. I mean, I, I don't know what else to say. Like, of course.
Okay. Well, we have run to the end of our articles, and we still have a bit of
We,
time, but
well, we have that emoji article.
we have the emoji article that we skipped over. I forgot all about
Uh-huh.
that. Let's go back to the beginning and find it here. There we go. Okay. Uh, let's read the headline and then pass it off to you. How we ended up with the pregnant man emoji. How did we, Marla?
I had to read this article for almost an hour to understand what the hell happened here. So the pregnant man emoji was added to, emojis worldwide. And of course, Republicans are throwing a fit because the idea that a trans man could be pregnant is irrational, and they just can't wrap their tiny little brains around it. Um, so I'm going to try to explain this as best I can.
Okay.
So there's something called the Unicode Emoji Subcommittee. I did not know this. They are the emoji governing body. Did you know there was an emoji governing body?
Well, that was the crazy thing, is just like when I first heard about emojis, and I'm like, wait, they're just on your phone, but like, wait, how does everybody have them? Like,
Right?
and I didn't understand. So I guess it kind of makes sense that there had to be a standards board, but governing body. This is amazing.
Yeah. So this governing body makes all they're the for some reason they're shortened to ESC, even though they're Unicode Emoji Subcommittee. I don't I don't know. I don't know what the I guess it's emoji subcommittee. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. So the ESC. So they make all the decisions and collect all the feedback that goes into creating new emojis or editing old ones. And they always, in creating emojis, start at a gender neutral default. Okay. And then build
Just like
from
humans,
there,
actually.
just like humans. Um, and then build from there. And what's important is when they're doing that, the naming scheme is very important in how they create these emojis and how they're spread to other apps and systems and all of that. So the naming scheme is really important here. And they start from neutral, and then make man version, make woman version, and then make all different skin color versions.
Okay.
In 2019, the group created basically a charter or a statement of intent listing all the priorities of creating diverse emojis. At the top of the list was gender, followed by skin color, and then direction and color. Um, so when it came to the pregnant emoji, the pregnant woman emoji already existed. All right. And it differed logically from all other emojis in that it was gendered and did not start with a neutral gender. It was in itself just a gendered emoji. So it broke away from the scheme that they were using,
Hmm.
especially the naming scheme. So they could have just made it become, they could have just made a man with swollen belly emoji and a neutral person with swollen belly emoji.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and then they would maybe change the woman one to also that, but that would require going back and like undoing like any kind of legacy programming that had this sort of thing and just a whole bunch of backwards compatibility issues. So basically, what they decided to do was instead of making um, the pregnant woman emoji, instead of deleting it and starting back with neutral pregnant person emoji, they just decided to make um, pregnant man and pregnant person emojis that are their own individual emojis but still fit the naming scheme of all the other emojis they've done in the past. So this idea that this is like purely out of some progressive tactic to, inclusion is
Oh,
nonsense. It's
woke, the
actually,
woke culture is going too far again.
yeah, it's literally just logic and um, working with legacy and backwards compatibility and all that stuff. Um, and it's insane to me because they, you know what? Maybe it was done politically, but it also makes sense from a logical system standpoint. So, you know, from no matter how you want to attack this thing, you can, it's, there's nothing wrong with it. There are pregnant men, there are pregnant non binary people, and not, and including them is not just inclusive, but it actually makes the entire emoji system work in the way it was designed to work.
Very fascinating. Somebody
So
points out it.
complicated.
Somebody points out in chat that there is also, and I'm assuming it's because of the exact opposite of the same thing. There is a
Uh-huh.
bearded woman emoji because of
Yes.
the natural gendered aspects of a beard.
Yep. And that's because that's how emojis work. They made I assume with the bearded woman one, they um it depends upon when they were made, but my assumption is if it was made later, they started with a just person with beard and then they made man with beard and woman with beard because that is the way that the emoji system works.
Well, that was fascinating, Marla, and I really appreciate the emojication on that one.
That took me so much of my day this morning to understand what the hell was going on there, and I hope I explained it in any way that was like understandable.
We need to get one of our programmers on as a correspondent to talk about this, maybe a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate the effort there in going. I love that you saw this article. You're like, it pertains, it's important to us, and I don't understand how. I've
Yes.
got to figure this out. Oh, that's right. That is right. We do have a question for you coming from
Oh,
Brianna. Um, oh,
What's
I
the
don't know why it
question?
was important for Brianna to know this, but what is the weather like out there this week? What's the New York weather forecast look like?
I don't know. Hold on, let me see what it's gonna look like in the future. It snowed very hard 2 days ago.
Wow.
Probably got something near 10 inches, and now everything is still covered in snow. I cannot get my car out. It is just, you know, plows have
Plowed in, yeah.
piled.
And now you're at the point where it's not snow anymore. It's just black and brown sludgy
Ice.
ice. Oh,
Yep.
snow in New
Um.
York is beautiful for about 20 minutes.
Yes. So looks like we're supposed to go up into the mid 40s later in the week, but we are supposed to get some rain, but no snow as of now. So that's nice. Unfortunately, um, I do like snow. I enjoy watching it,
Mhm.
but Olive loves it, and it's a problem because she every time it snows in the middle of the night, she's like, "Guys, get up, get up! Something's happening! I failed! Like the
This
like
is
the world
important.
has ended. We need to go. We need like wake up." Um, and then she'll spend as long as there's snow out on the balcony, she will um constantly be begging to go out on the balcony to lay in it or eat it or shove her face in it, and it's just like just just lay down, like
But yeah, dogs love ice cubes, and so ice cubes just kind of gently falling from the sky and congealing on the ground, like that's sort of perfect for them. And
yep.
especially anything that makes a mess, they love to roll in that. That's just a wonderful nightmare for puppy parents. And wow, yeah. All right, well, let's see. Is there anybody on that we want to raid over to? Let's see who's on that we appreciate. Ah, Paige is on. We haven't been able, or Psych Diver. We haven't been able to raid over to Paige in a while, and Paige has got some fun stuff going on, playing Pokemon Legends for our fun Pokemon crew. We have no builders or no behind open doors tonight, and obviously, Jeannie wasn't here for this because she's on vacation. So we will just see you tomorrow for Jay's Keep Living and the Transgender Show with Blossom Brown kicking off our transverse celebration of Black History Month, which starts tomorrow. Just I don't know if you checked it on your calendar, but time to show the support and love for our trans siblings of color, specifically the Black community. So it's something that we're really looking forward to celebrating this year. We've got some great guests scheduled and some good show news coming soon. So stay tuned for that. As I said, we're going to raid over to Paige the Metalhead. Y'all have a great night. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Night.